What's going on, everybody? Paul and Cody, Ditch Panda Bass Fishing. We got a video for you today all about dock fishing. Now, the last lake that we were on, we had a lot of fun fishing docks, and we decided maybe that would be it'd be one of those things where we should kind of go over how we did it. Absolutely. A little more in depth than just what you are going to see on the video from that fishery.
Yeah.
So
let's get into it. That's a dadgum ditch panda.
All right, so all about dock fishing, and we had a blast doing it. We kind of wanted to get more in depth on how we did what we did, and kind of like pick our own brains on what we thought, like what we were thinking when we were fishing this particular dock or these set of docks, because we had main lake docks. We also had secondary docks, like inside arms,
like main creek arms, yeah.
Right. And then we had just like giant docks,
yeah,
that you could spend a bunch of time on.
I think we should address the elephant in the room. I'm not really sure if it's an elephant. It's more like a cow. Not quite an elephant.
All right.
But it's like when you're watching, like if you watch MLF or you watch the Elite Series or you watch any bass fishing on TV, like somebody's always fishing docks, right? And they make it look pretty easy, right? Like someone's always fishing docks. Like Andy Montgomery, if there's a dock on the lake, he's gonna fish it.
Right.
And if there's multiple docks, some of these guys will run docks all day long. And when you're watching on the TV, it's like, oh yeah, I can go fish docks. And then you get on your boat on the water and you get to your first dock and you're like, well, I guess I just cast around it, or...
Yeah. I mean, guys like Andy Montgomery, Takahiro Mori, I mean, just to name a couple guys that if there is a dock on that lake, they're gonna hit it.
Yeah.
And what you don't see is how much water's underneath that dock.
Mm-hmm.
Is it floating? Does it have chains on it? Does it have rope on it? Is it held down by, is it like a center pole?
Yeah.
Or external, concrete pillar?
There's no difference to a dock. Let's do what we always do. Let's simplify this down, right?
Right, okay.
There's no difference between a dock and some other type of cover on the lake.
Right.
It's just cover to a fish. It's just cover.
Yeah, imagine a dock is like a big laydown.
Yep, exactly. It's just another form of cover that the bass will stack up on. When you get there, you're like, oh my gosh, there's chains and there's wires and there's a walkway. This one's got 7 boat slips in it. And it can be pretty
overwhelming,
a daunting task
to
try to fish this thing.
Right, especially if there's $100,000 boats in it.
Yeah, don't worry about those boats. You just cast away, man.
It is soft plastics. I mean, let's be honest.
Maybe not.
We're not skipping jatterbaits.
Yeah.
We haven't got to that lesson yet.
No. We're talking specifics here. All right. So, we're trying to make it as simple as possible. That's what me and Paul like. We like simplicity.
Yes.
So with simplicity comes illustrations.
Yeah, and Cody drew an excellent one.
I hope you can see this. Oh, you can see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Vanna White.
Yeah.
There we are.
So we're going to use this as just a helpful tool. So when we're talking about it, you guys kind of understand and can see what we're referring to as we go along. Perfect drawing, I know.
Yeah, the drawing is tough.
This is like your basic dock, like your basic private-owned dock. A lot of them here in California, especially on any lake where you have a lot of water that recedes and rises, but really slowly, you don't have a lot of permanent docks on that water. So like here in California, we have most of the docks are floating docks, and they all roll in and out with the water down the bank. Most of the walkways will be on wheels, and the chains will go from the water 100 yards up the bank sometimes, because the water fluctuates so much because we have so many droughts around here. So there's long periods of time with water at different levels.
Right.
Now, back in the south and back east and in the north, you have a lot of permanent docks. And we're going to get into why that's important in a minute. But we want to talk about the 3 things that we're fishing on a dock when we come up to it.
Yeah, what we're looking for, or what we're looking at.
Yeah, what we're looking to target.
Right.
Because there's a lot of stuff, and if you just go and cast, you know, to the sides of it and down the front, you're really missing the key things that actually what the dock is good for, and that's the cover, which is underneath the dock and
Right.
hard to get to most of the time. So when we talk about the 3 areas that the fish seem to stack up on the most, that's the center of the dock where all the shade is, especially in the summer when it's hot. You're going to find them here 90% of the time. The corners, which is, I mean, I couldn't say this for 100%, but I would imagine it's an ambush deal.
Yeah, it's gonna...
Especially when you have, you know, if you have some type of current coming around the dock, and depending on where it's set up on the lake.
Even wind current's gonna kind of move the fish into specific spots.
And with permanent docks, again, you have, you know, permanent cement or wood pylons coming down that will, when the wind moves, make current, and they will set up on these corners as an ambush point. And the third thing we look at to fish is the ramp. Now, here in California, with that ramp being not permanent, there's nothing in the water. And it doesn't provide a lot of shade, and they're typically pretty high off the water. So there's very little shade. And here with moving docks like that, you don't find them on the ramp very often.
Yeah, that's going to be typically for a permanent dock situation where there's going to be pilings going in, whether they're concrete, metal, wood. And again, if you had a lake that was completely flat and contourless and you were looking for a bass, the only place where, I mean, you're going to find one in a place where there could be a pebble that's that big.
Yeah.
They want to sit next to something. So even if they've got skinny, you know, wrought iron pieces of metal going in to hold that in place, that thing, those bass are going to relate to stuff like that.
Right.
But again, in certain areas where they're floating docks, you're not really going to get that.
Yeah.
You're going to concentrate mostly on the main dock, the corners, underneath.
Well, let's break down each section. So when we roll up to a dock, number one, we're fishing under this dock. Typically it's going to be hotter, lots of shade under there. You got to skip to do it most of the time. Some docks aren't even skippable. Some of them are easy to skip. Some of them are a little more challenging. You'll have really small openings in the floats. But
we'll put up some video. Well, you're going to be watching video throughout this whole video.
So
but you'll see floats that are like, the floats are generally separate, right? So you're going to have a float on each corner.
Right, and you might have pontoon floats that come out like this on each side, right? Those are easy to skip because you just skip it right this way and you're throwing right down the center of this thing. And you can skip that thing all the way to shore and fish the ramp too.
Right.
You might have them that run this way, same deal, you just fish from the other side. Then you might have square that end up going like this.
Yeah. You see this a lot out here.
You see this a lot of here, they're plastic floats. And you'll get that. Then you can fish them either way, any direction. You get this a lot on lakes that are like pleasure boater lakes because they take more abuse. The plastic holds up better than, you know, the aluminum on the floats.
Yeah, or back in the day, like the foam.
You
see foam ones, really, really old school one.
Big docks, like big marina docks, have these too. So that's important. They are easy to fish though, because this thing is still all shade, right? But now you have also these corners in here, which fish will stack up on. They can hold on all of this stuff now, which is good.
Yep,
I like to see these docks.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to be able to fish. You have multiple targets.
Yeah.
I mean, you can just kind of move around this whole dock. Generally, they're going to, I mean, even the smaller docks, a dock maybe just the size of a couple of these tables is going to hold multiple fish in some spots. And
then that's that. Once you find them, then you can utilize this 3-step process. It's not like that. Like what's that dude that does like the 5-minute abs?
Yeah,
it's like this 3-step process.
Sure.
So
$29.99 right here.
Yeah. So
you're gonna get this. He'll sign it too, just so you know.
Right here.
Yeah.
The center, the big piece of the dock, that's always number one for us.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely want to spend some time on that for sure. Yeah. Definitely.
So, getting baits under here. If you're not real into with skipping, start on a spinning reel. Throw a wacky worm. It's very easy to skip that. As long as you learn the cast, you're not going to mess up your reel and spend the whole day cussing at your reel and your rod. So that. 2 are the corners. Like I said, we don't see this a lot you don't see the corners a lot come into play in the summertime because they're trying to get as much shade as possible. Like I said, if there's a special situation, like we said before, where there's current, you fish these corners, you're catching fish on the corners, fish every single corner of that dock.
Yeah, I mean, here's another thing that you can do too. If you want to throw moving bait, you don't always have to throw stick bait. So this works out beautiful for fishing a corner of a dock. Now, we'll put up video right now of me catching a fish on a swim bait that I threw over a dock. Okay, so
imagine the boat being here, and he casts like this, but brings the rod over so the line falls on this side of the corner of the dock.
Yep.
But the bait starts here, and when he retrieves it straight this way, it cuts that corner dock, just like that.
As soon as you get to the corner of that dock and you give it a couple little twitches, or you kill it real quick, or you reel spin it, you know, to speed it up, I got bit immediately. Yeah. And it was just like clockwork. If you can get, and so you use your angles, use your boat position, use your angles. You can do this from the bank.
Absolutely.
You can absolutely do this from the bank, and so be looking for the same kind of stuff.
Yep.
You can throw it right down the side of the dock.
This is the only way to fish corners with a moving bait. On docks where the float is out on the corner, which is most of them.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely don't want to do it with chains.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole other thing we'll get into. So corners are good, especially when there's current, and you know, in the fall, in the springtime, when they're really heavily feeding, corners are great because they're ambush points, as we already said. Let's talk about the runway.
So like on a permanent dock.
Okay. So basically, this gets X'd. If it's not a permanent dock, if there's not pylons coming down, we're probably not going to fish this.
No, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because generally they're pretty far out of the water, and there's nothing underneath them except a little bit of shade. But given this spot, if you were to look at this right now, if you're a fish, you're going under that part.
Occasionally, you will get a floating runway that has floats also, but usually those floats are stacked up pretty close, and like skipping under them is almost worthless because this thing's only 3 feet across. So again, but if we talk permanent docks where you have pilings, absolutely those are in play.
Yeah, you want to fish those.
And you can cast to every single one of them, especially in dirty water. In dirty water, those bass are going to want to get to something that they can stick their nose on and feel comfortable. And on the bottom, so they're not going to play out here, but you'll find them there might be a fish on every single piling on this walkway.
Yeah, that's water clarity. Glad you brought that up. So water clarity, just generally speaking, the fish are going to be a little shallower most of the time.
Or if it's dirty.
So yeah, again, bank fishermen, this works out great for everybody involved. Like you can literally cast to every single one of those pilings and just let it kind of kick it, you know, no big deal.
And bank fishermen, you've got the advantage too, because typically your chains come like this. And if you're a bank fisherman and you can get here and cast to these pilings, you don't have to worry about the chains.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about casting under them or over them.
Right. Yeah. It's starting to look like a John Madden.
That's what I was going for.
Yeah.
Now it's terrible. I wish I could like get it back to where it was.
So real quick, let's go over it real fast. Just to kind of put everything together. If it's a floating dock, deal with fish the points of the dock and the floats. That's what you need to concentrate on.
Corners in the center.
Corners in the center, and if it doesn't have it, move on. If you can't get under the dock, move on. Throw to your corners and then move on, because there's plenty of other docks on that lake. If there's one, there's more. If they're permanent, really concentrate on the permanent fixtures of the dock.
Yep.
They love that stuff because it doesn't move.
Yep.
So think about that. It doesn't move. It gives them a little more
Absolutely.
Security, right? So focus on those first and then move in. It's always a good idea to move from outside in.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and I've heard it both ways. I've heard that kind of like both theories on that, but I think working from from outside to inside on docks is the only way to go. Because you're going to spook a fish. If you spook a fish on a corner because you're trying to throw into the middle of the dock before you try the corners, depending on how those fish are.
It's also the process of elimination, right? You only have to think about this probably on your first 2 docks.
Yeah, then after that it's just automatic.
Well, because it's like if you caught your fish on the corners, if you caught fish on the corners of your first and second dock, I wouldn't even skip under the next ones. I would be fishing all the corners and moving on.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even waste my time.
Right. And revisit it when you stop catching fish on the corners. When you stop catching fish on the corners, go back and fish the
chances are it's because the sun got higher and moved the shade.
Exactly. So these fish reload. That is one beautiful thing about docks. They reload. You could sit there for hours. We have a video about a dock that we fished for literally half of a day.
Let's talk about those docks real quick.
Okay.
There's other docks you get to, like marina docks.
Yeah. Multi-boat docks.
Yeah, where they come out and then there's arms and slips and they go out, attack it the same way. There's always a bigger portion. That's your center where most of your shade's going to be. If that's where your fish are loading up on the smaller docks, that's where they're going to be on this dock. If they're on the corners, you have a lot of corners to fish. You better get to work.
As the day gets farther along, the fish are going to come together underneath the dock. It's super easy if you think about it in that frame of mind or in that scenario. The early morning stuff, the fish can be spread out. The sun gets higher, they move closer together because there's less actual shade. And the more shade, the better. Those fish want to get there, and they're all hanging out. So if you get to that big dock in the middle of the day, I would probably go right to the middle of it.
Yeah.
Because it's the hottest part of the day. The sun's right above you. You'll be able to see, a lot of times you can see those fish cruising around really. If you just stay back and the sun is in the right position, you could literally just look around for a little bit depending on the clarity of your water, and you can probably see some fish cruise and give you a real good clue as to where they are.
Those big docks too, you don't see this around small docks as much, but those big marina docks typically attract a lot of bluegill, and that probably has to do with people on the docks feeding them and such.
Sure. Food falling in, all kinds of stuff. But you typically see a lot of bluegill around those big marina docks, and the bass will give themselves away. Because we have a video. I'm sure one of these videos you can hear us talking about it, but they'll be busting on bluegill all over the docks, and they just give themselves away. You don't even have to go looking for them. Right. And then you know what? And when you're fishing that kind of dock where you see bluegill like that, you need to throw a bottom contact bait under the dock. Whether it's a drop shot, whether it's a shaky head, whether it's just throw something as close to that dock as you can, skip it if you can, and just let it hit the ground. Let it hit the bottom of the lake and bounce it, because all those fish, all those bass are underneath the bluegill and they're looking up.
Yep.
And if you can get something right in front of their face, they'll eat it. You can definitely throw wacky, and you can skip. It just takes a little bit longer, and those bluegill are going to beat the crap out of it the entire way it comes down, or they'll move it off the dock. We had that happen a bunch.
Yeah.
So instead of fighting that, throw something that's going to get to the bottom, and just take your chances. I'm telling you, you're going to find bigger fish down there anyway.
Yeah.
So again, another tip, little something to try.
Yeah. But getting those bluegill fired up on a wacky worm or something smaller as it's falling also isn't a bad thing too.
It'll frustrate the bass. Definitely.
Yeah, they don't want to see them eating and them not.
Right.
So
That's you can do it. It's just it's going to make it a little more frustrating because these bluegill grab that thing and take off. Yeah. And so they move your bait outside of the strike zone for the stuff that you're really trying to get to. So if that starts to happen, then just switch it up. Just throw something that sinks fast. Yeah. And get past all those bluegill, because the bluegill will go down a little bit until they see a bass, and they're not going any farther because that bass is going to eat them. So we'll put some of that video in too. It's really it's hilarious. Yeah. Picking apart docks is super easy if you're armed with just a little bit of knowledge. Yeah, and just take it and go with it. It's a lot of times, especially in California. I know I don't want to talk to just Californians when it comes to fishing, but we don't have a lot of lakes that have docks that are fishable. We don't have a lot of lakes that we can fish that have like a bunch of docks.
There's not a whole bunch of them, no.
So, and if you're in a if you're in a state that doesn't have a lot of dock fishing, it could seem a little bit overwhelming. So that's kind of why we wanted to do this.
A lot of our lakes are no water contact.
Yeah.
Which is like, some of you guys listening are gonna be like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, you cannot put your skin in the water.
Right.
You can't swim in it. You can't ride a jet ski in it. You can't wakeboard. All you can do is boat and fish.
Right.
So for that reason, we don't have a lot of lakes that have docks on them.
Right, because people don't spend a bunch of time on that lake unless they're fishing.
Right.
Basically. Yeah. So.
Unfortunately, they don't build docks just for us to fish.
Yeah.
I wish they did.
Man, that's a different video.
That is a video.
Might be a good business.
That's a good call, buddy. So don't let it frustrate you. Simplify it. Use those 3 portions of the dock. Work it. Find where they're biting. Keep that pattern going. Don't let it be overwhelming. Even the big ones. Figure out where they're biting and fish those all day.
Yeah, and just fish that. You don't have to, And again, you can go back. You can go back and you can fish it again the same day.
Oh, yeah.
So these things reload. A lot of tournaments are won on docks. There's a reason. Because when you find the right one, you can go back and you can fish that same dock and catch fish all day long.
All day. So. Absolutely. Well, thanks for watching, guys. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel, leave a like on the video, comment down below. If you're looking for beef jerky,
Baggable beef jerky.
Baggable DP10, get you 10% off at checkout. Use that code, get your jerky. Until next time, we'll see you later.
See you.